Joining me now is David Pyne. David, it's been a while since we've had a good visit with you, a couple weeks, I think. Where are we at? I guess President Trump was supposed to have a meeting in Hungary with Vladimir Putin, but that has reportedly been canceled because Putin doesn't want to give up land, and I guess Zelensky doesn't want to give up land, and so they're going to keep fighting. So there's no reason for a meeting. Do I have that right?
Well, actually, I think that Trump actually does want to give up the land. In fact, he's been pressuring Zelensky and EU leaders to accept Russia's demand for the Donbass since before the Anchorage summit. That's really the whole issue here.
But Zelensky doesn't want to give it up.
No, of course, yeah. Zelensky's not going to drop his maximalist demands for not giving 1 inch of additional Ukrainian territory to Russia as the price for a peace deal that secures Ukraine's independence for decades to come. It's been quite a ping pong match here as we've gone back and forth over the last week. Starting with, of course, last time I was on last month on your show, we had Trump was threatening. He was vowing to help Ukraine retake all of its territory and perhaps even invade some Russian territory as well. And then he had he had a little bit of a 180 when he met with President Putin in a phone call. It lasted 2.5 hours. He said it was very positive, very productive. That occurred, just 5 days ago. And he basically, Putin pretty much persuaded him that, peace is in America's interest as well. We could establish this new geostrategic partnership that Trump has been wanting to establish with Russia. With huge rare earth mineral deals that would enrich the U.S. economy, make us more independent from China, and get this war, finalized so that Trump could maybe be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize next October. And Trump was pretty happy with that. And Putin said, all we need is the Donbass, and we have a deal. Essentially, there's been that deal on the table since before the Anchorage summit that Trump and Putin negotiated, and he keeps allowing Zelensky to veto it. So he met with Zelensky during the infamous shouting match we've been hearing from the Financial Times and other outlets just last Friday, and he demanded that Zelensky accept all of Russia's peace terms, saying it was a good deal for Ukraine, that Ukraine had no chance to win the war, that it was losing, and it would. He conveyed essentially what Putin's ultimatum was. Take this more generous deal that we're offering from the Russian side, or else face destruction. And Zelensky pushed back, and Trump repeated some expletives, and Zelensky pulled out a map to show how important the Donbass region was to Ukraine, and Trump cast them aside, but then he came out and basically capitulated to Zelensky's talking points, coming out of the meeting saying that it was too complicated to give up the Donbass because Zelensky and the EU wouldn't accept it. So we just needed to have peace along the ceasefire line. And then, of course, since then we've seen Trump cancel the summit. Just yesterday, there was the Budapest summit that he was saying would end this inglorious war. Again, this peace deal is waiting to be signed, essentially. And, he ended up canceling. The reason he canceled it, according to Rubio, was because Russia wouldn't drop its quote unquote maximalist demands for the Donbass region, which Trump himself has been pushing Zelensky to cede for the last 2 to 2.5 months.
So where do you see this all going? Is this going to drag out forever, or are they just going to finally, Russia's going to defeat Ukraine? Because you were listing on your X feed today how much bigger the military of Russia is than Ukraine. How many more have died in Ukraine than have died on the Russian side? So what if you had to guess how this is going to end? How does it end?
Well, it ends in an inevitable Russian victory. As I mentioned in my X post today, Russia is 35 times larger. It has, 5.3 times more people. Its army is just in terms of troops in Ukraine, it has 3 times more troops, according to Ukrainian Armed Forces Commanding General Syrskyi, with up to 6-to-1 quantitative advantage along critical sections of the front. So what that means is that, at any time, Putin could order a northern offensive. It could be in the Kharkiv region, it could be in Sumy, it could be in Chernihiv or Kyiv itself, and simply roll up Ukrainian forces in the Donbass region with an envelopment maneuver, similar to Germany's Blitzkrieg of France in 1940. And that's been something that the hardliners have been pushing Putin to do. It's been something that I would suspect Russian generals have been pushing him to do. But Putin is extremely cautious. He's very rational and he's very restrained. And for whatever reason, he's opted not to go, for a quick win and to keep, attriting Ukrainian forces, which, as I've written, is about 6-to-1, Russian casualty advantage, where Ukraine's lost in excess of 2 million troops killed and wounded, perhaps much more than that, whereas Russia's suffered about 350,000 casualties, with about 135,000 killed in action.
Mm. All right, let's move over to Iran. The leader of Iran is taunting President Trump on social media, telling him he doesn't have a right to decide which countries have nuclear weapons, and that they have all of their nuclear enrichment program is safe, deep underground. So what is Trump to do? Is he going to go with Israel and do another strike on Iran, or just let it go?
Well, if you listen to Trump, the Iranian nuclear program was obliterated during the June strikes. Which,
but he also says we have peace in the Middle East too. So,
well, we have a pause. We certainly have a pause in the Gaza war, and that's all thanks to Trump, and I've been praising him for that. And he's been constraining Israel. With the we don't need to talk about that, but there was, of course, the ceasefire violations,
right?
And those have been resolved, in favor of peace, thanks to Trump's pressure and sending Witkoff and of course his son-in-law Kushner as well. But in terms of Iran, it's just my belief is that Iran, as we've talked about on the show, Iran likely has nuclear weapons. But perhaps more to the point, their nuclear production capabilities have not been significantly impeded by the B-2 strikes conducted in June. And the reason is, they've still have thousands of centrifuges that they could, in highly enriched uranium, which they were able to withdraw from those 3 sites because Trump gave them reportedly up to 48 hours notice before he decided to bomb them. In exchange for a muted response on the Iranian side, and I think that served us very well. But it also ensured that the impact of our strikes would be quite limited. I used to be an opponent of the JCPOA, but looking back, that's an Iranian nuke deal is far more preferable than bombing strikes that could potentially risk the destruction of tens of millions of American citizens. So. I'm now a supporter of Iran nuke deal. They offered a deal, I think, in March or April, where it's essentially a JCPOA 2 agreement, which would include much more robust verification measures, where we could, would be able to more strongly verify that they're getting rid of their highly enriched uranium. Essentially, it would be perhaps a Iranian nuclear freeze. That's really the best we can do in North Korea as well. But of course, Iran would retain its modest-sized nuclear arsenal as a potential de facto nuclear power.
Tell me where you stand on the bombing of what we're told are narco terrorists from Venezuela. What do you make of this? We've killed several of them, captured a couple. What do you make of this?
Well, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of us sinking boats without any verification that that they are in fact narco terrorists, and even if they were, that's something. That's what Coast Guard vessels are for. We can capture them. We seize their vessels. We can put them under, send them to Guantanamo Bay if we want. and torture them. But why do we need to kill them? I just don't see a need for these drone strikes sinking these boats.
So what's it
Is
all
it a big
about?
Well, I think a lot of it is posturing. He's really he's deployed a substantial force. 4,500 Marines, at least one amphibious assault carrier. At least three guided missile destroyers. I think maybe a cruiser as well. Some landing ships. He's special forces. I think are in the region. He's deployed air defense missiles in Puerto Rico, F-35s. So all those are giving him a military option, probably not to fully invade Venezuela, but perhaps even to engage in a raid on the capital of Caracas and try to take out Maduro and have a regime change operation, which would be done at a relative, at least in theory, at a relatively cheap cost in terms of American men and material. I'd love to see Maduro out of power. I think having communist Venezuela is a threat to the U.S. I'd love to see it, but I'd love to see it done after we resolve the war in Ukraine, because I think we're really overextended, and we can't just keep starting all these wars. War with potentially nuclear armed Iran. War with Yemen. Now we're maybe going to do Venezuela, and of course Taiwan is in the back mirror, and could erupt at any moment.
So do you think this is about trying to chase China out of our backyard, or it's a regime change to not only get China out of there, but also maybe to get hold of all these minerals and oil and put them on our tokenization ledger as we go to a new form of currency or a new economic system that's not debt-based but asset-based? What do you think? I mean, usually when you do a war, there's multiple reasons, not one. Are there multiple reasons here?
Yeah, I think every reason you just stated are the reasons that we're doing this. Secretary of State Rubio is, reportedly he's been wanting to overthrow the communist Venezuelan regime for years, perhaps even decades. Of course, he's a Cuban American, so that's understandable. But it's something I've been wanting to do as well. We shouldn't be fighting wars half the world away. We should be liberating countries from communism here in our own hemisphere as a hemispheric superpower. And that's what Trump's, reported national defense strategy would do. It would convert us. Essentially, we would pull back, not completely, but we would deprioritize and withdraw troops from Europe, the Middle East, and the Far East and Western Pacific in favor of, a strategy where we would focus on the defense of the U.S. homeland, the Western Hemisphere, and the Pacific and the Atlantic, and not necessarily countering China all the way full forward in the South China Sea, which has kind of been the default strategy for decades.
All right. So what do you see? Anything else on your radar for the U.S. that we ought to be paying attention to? How about China, Taiwan? Are we just going to give Taiwan over? Versus, and by the way, is Xi Jinping even in power? What's going on there militarily?
Well, Xi Jinping is never been stronger. I think China is kind of at the apogee of its dominance in that region. We've heard from former director of the U.S. Pacific Fleet Intelligence, Sam Faddis. He's a former U.S. Navy captain, stated that the Chinese PLA Navy rules the waves in this up to the second island chain. So I think by default the U.S. should kind of pull back. We should not be actively engaged in naval and air exercises in that region, because in the event of war, any ships in that region would be sunk essentially. Because we're massively overmatched by Chinese power. Certainly, the Beijing military parade that occurred on September 3rd demonstrated that, because they had so many different weapon systems, anti-ship missiles, hypersonic missiles, nuclear hypersonic missiles. I mean, just every type of weapon system you could possibly imagine. And the U.S. just takes so long. It takes decades for us to build develop systems, get the Sentinel ICBM up and going, the Columbia-class submarines. We're still going to have missiles that are, 50 years old in terms of nuclear strategic missile systems. And I just learned yesterday it takes us 2 years just to rebuild a single Abrams tank. So Russia's turning them out like 1,000 to 1,500 a year with brand new T-90M tanks. And we don't even build it. We haven't built a new tank from scratch, I think, since I think we have with the Bookers, we have had like 50 Booker tanks that are medium tanks, but those have been canceled. But in terms of Abram tanks, we haven't built a new one for over 30 years.
All right. So if you want to keep up on all that's happening in all the hot spots around the world, David Pyne's doing it at dpyne.substack.com. You can also follow him on X at AmericaFirstCon, at AmericaFirstCon. And as I said, dpyne.substack.com. All right, David, keep us posted.
Thanks, Brandon. Have a
Thank
great
you,
day.
David. You too. David Pyne checking in. We'll be right back. We live in uncertain times. In fact, we live at a time when our own governments all over the world are warning us that there could be big problems with our power grid. World War III seems to be right on the horizon. Let me ask you this. Do you have a satellite phone? Should communications go down with cell towers? Do you have a satellite phone to get a hold of that college student or your spouse who travels, whatever it might be, to get a hold of your senior adult parents? We have satellite phones at worldviewtalk.com, and you get the satellite phone for free when you sign up for their very reasonable payment programs for the service. Sign up for the service with a reasonable contract, get the satellite phone for free. Worldviewtalk.com. You'll also find they have, well, what I now have, which is a solar generator. Yeah, I have a gas generator, an LP propane generator, but what if that goes down? I want to back up to my backup. So I now have a solar generator as well. You'll find them at worldviewtalk.com. Check it out today, worldviewtalk.com. Joining me now is Annie Cyrus. Look at what Laura Loomer put out today. In today's example of vetting gone wrong, meet Amir Ghalib. Ghalib is the Muslim mayor of Hamtramck, Michigan, and he is the newly appointed ambassador to Kuwait. He was honored by President Trump at the White House iftar the other night, likely because of a vetting failure. Trump was likely only told Ghalib got Muslims to vote for him in 2024, but I doubt he was told about